all the prophecies regarding the return of Christ and Elijah, or the coming of the Lord of hosts and Elijah, and the end of the time are all fulfilled in His Holiness the Bab, the forerunner, and His Holiness Baha'u'llah, the prophet founder of the Baha'i faith. They even tells us the exact year they will appear. That is 1260 of the lunar calendar, or 1844 of the solar calendar. They even tells us where they will come from and where they are going. They say they will come from the east and going to the Holy Land. That is the east of Jerusalem. They say they will come from Assyria, going to the Holy Land. Assyria is an area where Iraq and Iran are today. They even tells us the place they will be raised up. Daniel 8 verse 2, Elam will be the place of the vision. In Jeremiah 49:38, I will set my throne on Elam, saith the Lord. Elam is the ancient name of Persia, which is now called Iran. They even tells us the name he will be known. In Daniel 12 verse 1, I will raise up in the end time Michael, the chief prince of Persia. In Ezekiel 1 verse 28, I will confirm things in the end time with Michael the prince. In Daniel 10 verse 13, I will uphold things in the end time with Michael the prince. Michael translating to English is one who looks like God. Another way of saying it, the glory of God. All these were fulfilled on His Holiness Baha'u'llah, whose name means glory of God. Baha'u'llah was born and raised in Elam, the place where God will set His throne. Still in Elam is where the forerunner of Baha'u'llah, His Holiness the Bab, was also born and raised. And in Elam is where His Holiness the Bab declared his mission on the 23rd of May 1844 in Shiraz, in Elam, Persia. The Bab said he comes to prepare the way for the coming of Him whom God shall make manifest, a reference to Baha'u'llah. And he said he will come quickly after him. The Bab was executed by a firing squad of 750 rifles at a public square in Tabriz on the 9th of July, 1850. He was only 31 years old. The declaration of the Bab in 1844 marks the end of the Adamic cycle and the beginning of the everlasting cycle, the Baha'i cycle that will last 500,000 years. Muhammad was considered to be the the seal of the prophets, meaning the last prophet of the Adamic cycle. The Adamic cycle started 6,000 years ago and ended in 1844 in a declaration of His Holiness the Bab on the 23rd of May 1844, which marks the end of the Adamic cycle and the beginning of the everlasting cycle. Baha'u'llah, that was prophesied by the Bab, received his revelation in the Siyachal, the black pit, an underground dungeon where he was incarcerated by the Persian authorities in 1852, just 2 years after the martyrdom of his forerunner, His Holiness the Bab. And Baha'u'llah later on publicly declared his mission in Babylon in 1863 in a garden of Rizwan by the Tigris River, a festival that is commemorated by the Baha'is of the world as the Festival of Rizwan for 12 days from the 21st of April to the 2nd of May. Baha'u'llah was in Babylon because he was exiled there by the Persian authorities. Babylon is mentioned in the Holy Bible as a holy place. It was made holy by the footsteps and the presence there of the Lord of Hosts, His Holiness Baha'u'llah, when he was exiled there. In Matthew 24, it tells the story of Christ on Mount Olive, when the apostles came to him in private and asked him, "Tell us, when are these things be? What are the signs of your coming and the end of the world?" And in his answer, he gave 3 promises. And one of these promises is when you see the abomination of desolation spoken by Daniel the prophet that stand in a holy place. That holy place mentioned here is Babylon. When Daniel had his vision, he was in Babylon. You might ask, what is the prophet of Israel doing in Babylon? King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon and the Babylonians invaded Israel about 600 years before Christ, or 586 BC to be precise. And they exiled most, if not all, of the Israelites to Babylon. All the visions of that is how prophet Daniel ended up to be in Babylon, and all his vision happened while he was in Babylon. And Babylon was made holy by the footsteps and the presence there for 10 years of the Lord of Hosts, His Holiness Baha'u'llah, when he was exiled there by the Persian authorities. And it was here in Babylon that he publicly declared his mission. And Baha'u'llah was exiled further by the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire, first to the fortified city of Constantinople, in Turkey, then to Adrianople, and finally to the fortified city of Akka in Haifa, Israel. Akka is also mentioned in the holy writings, like in Hosea 2 verse 30, I have made Akka as a door of hope. In the Islamic holy scriptures state, blessed is he that visited Akka, blessed is he that visited the prisoner of Akka. Baha'u'llah arrived in Akka in 1868, and this journey through his exile fulfilled one of the prophecies in the Bible that said that when the Lord of hosts journey to the Holy Land, he will go from mountain to mountains, from rivers to rivers, from sea to sea, and from fortified city to fortified cities. Baha'u'llah went from the Kurdistan mountain in Iraq to Mount Carmel in Israel, in the Holy Land. From the river in Iraq to the Euphrates River in Israel, and from the Caspian Sea to the Sea of Galilee in the Holy Land, and from the fortified city of Constantinople to the fortified city of Akka in the Holy Land. It fulfills that prophecies perfectly through his exile, journey through his exile. Baha'u'llah arrived in Akka in 1868, and he proclaimed his message to all the world when he wrote to all the kings and rulers of the world at the time. These rulers are Tsar Alexander II of Russia, Napoleon III of France, William III of Germany, Her Majesty Queen Victoria of England, Nasiruddin Shah of Persia, Sultan Abdulaziz of the Ottoman Empire in Turkey, Pope Pius IX of the Vatican, President of the Great Republic of the West, that is President of the United States of America, Congress of bishops, ecclesiastical authorities and leaders of governments and religions, and much, much more. In Baha'u'llah's letter to these world leaders represented the whole world at the time, for some of them have sovereignty over so many countries and vast sections of land, like the Ottoman Empire, the British Commonwealth, to name just two. In Baha'u'llah's letter to these world leaders, he stated, the unknown physician has his finger on the pulse of mankind. He perceiveth the disease, and prescribeth in his unerring wisdom the remedy. One of these diseases is religious fanaticism and hatred as a world-devouring fire, whose violence none can quench. The hand of divine power can alone deliver mankind from this desolating affliction. And for the remedy, It is for them, these world leaders, to put aside their differences and come together in unity and peace and harmony. Unfortunately for the world, all of these leaders, except one, ignore the unknown physician's exhortation. Except one, that is Queen Victoria of England. In her response to Baha'u'llah's tablet to Her Majesty, she wrote, "If this is of God, it will endure. If not, it will do no harm." It definitely endured. And it did no harm to humanity. In fact, it heightened humanity's spirituality, and it advanced humanity's society. Baha'u'llah passed away in Akka in 1892. 40 years exactly since the inception of his revelation in a seer child in Tehran, Iran, in 1852. And it fulfills one other prophecies of the Bible, which state that the mission of the Lord of hosts on earth will be the same time as the time of the Exodus. The Exodus is when Moses brought the children of Israel from under the rule of the Pharaoh of Egypt and took them to the promised land, which is Canaan. And that journey took them exactly 40 years. And Baha'u'llah is interred in Baji, the plain of Sharon, in the vicinity of Mount Carmel, the mountain of God, that the Israelis, prophets of old, said it would be beautified and sanctified and glorified by the footsteps of the Lord of hosts in the end times. This was literally fulfilled when His Holiness Baha'u'llah walked on Mount Carmel and showed the center of the covenant, His Holiness Abdu'l-Baha, the spot on the mountain to build the shrine of his forerunner, His Holiness the Bab, and where he is to be interred when his remains is brought over to the Holy Land from Persia, where he was executed on the 9th of July, 1850. It was here on this Mount Carmel where the headquarters of his faith, the Baha'i faith, is situated. On here on Mount Carmel is where the seat of the Universal House of Justice, the highest administrative body of his faith, resides. All the buildings on Mount Carmel, including the seat of the Universal House of Justice, were built in the formation of an ark, as the Ark of the Covenant. And on Mount Carmel is where Baha'u'llah's law is flowing down from to feed his flock and to feed and educate all mankind. You can see how clearly it is for the fulfillment of all these prophecies on Baha'u'llah and the Bab, his forerunner. They both of them raised up in Elam, and both of them are now buried in the Holy Land on Mount Carmel and on Baji near Mount Carmel. And the headquarters of the Baha'i faith is situated on Mount Carmel in the Holy Land. Thank you, and I wish you well. Whaftai lava, manuia lava whafongfong mai lava sau saunga Samoa, soifua.